Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a horror thriller film, The Black Phone. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in 1978, North Denver. A clever boy named Finney is an amazing pitcher in the current baseball match against another school. From the mini grandstand, Finney's crush and his younger sister, Gwen, watch him play against Bruce, the opponent's batter. Unfortunately, Finney's team loses after Bruce successfully hits a home run. After the game, Bruce praises Finney for having a mint arm. Days have passed since the game day, when Bruce strangely disappears from the neighborhood. He's the fourth boy missing from the community recently. Meanwhile, Finney and Gwen live with their alcoholic and temperamental father. Afterward, Finney and Gwen travel to school together, and along the way, they notice a recently plastered missing poster of Bruce. Finney reckons he's included in the missing children case. The two siblings soon continue their way to school when they suddenly hear their schoolmates aggravating the bloody fight between Finney's best friend, Robin, and the giant bully boy. Finney hates brutality, so he leaves the crowd, dragging Gwen with him. Gwen teases Finney for being a chicken, but Finney just doesn't want violence since it's less hassle. Finney and Gwen arrive at school and attend their classes. Inside the classroom, Finney fidgets his mini rocket flashlight. Then, after spotting the three bullies waiting for him, Finney immediately hides in the boys' restroom. However, they corner him quickly and order him to come out of the stall. Finney complies with their request, because hiding only prolongs the inevitable punches. Fortunately, Robin enters the restroom, and his presence and bloody knuckle already intimidate them. While Robin cleans his bleeding knuckles, he warns the three bullies not to mess with Finney anymore. Finally at peace, Robin encourages Finney to learn to defend himself from bullies, because they won't stop unless he does something. Finney agrees with him, but it's too violent for him. Robin then takes Finney's mind off his bullies for a moment and asks if Finney can assist him with mathematics again. As a good friend, Finney gladly accepts to help him. Meanwhile, two detectives from the police department visit Gwen in the school to discuss the missing children case. According to Bruce's younger sister, Bruce disappeared after Gwen dreamed about the grabber kidnapped Bruce, and afterward left black balloons at the crime scene. The two detectives are dumbfounded, wondering how Gwen knew about the black balloons in the case when they never publicized such evidence. It turns out, Gwen inherited her late mother's psychic ability, and she can see the past and future. Gwen asserts her dreams might be real, but the two detectives only struggle to believe her. After school, Gwen stays overnight at a friend's house, and Finney goes back home to take care of their dad. At home, Finney is distressed until he falls asleep from watching a horror movie. The next morning, Finney wakes up upon hearing Gwen stroke cry. The father is physically punishing Gwen for telling her dreams to the police. He gets angrier when Gwen claims that her dreams are real, so he forces her to repeat to him, "My dreams aren't real," until she understands the lesson. That night, the father receives bad news from the police. He looks at Finney and asks if he knows Robin. The moment the father mentions Robin's name, Finney instantly realizes that the grabber took Robin, so he goes to his room to let the bad news sink in. When Gwen follows Finney to his room to comfort him, he asks if she can use her psychic ability to find Robin. Gwen knows her dreams don't work by will, but she wants to take a try. So Gwen goes to her room, prepares her little altar, and prays to God to help in searching for Robin. It's Friday again, and the three bullies hurt and gang around Finney now that Robin's missing. Gwen joins the fight to rescue Finney and attacks the first bully in the head. However, the second bully quickly retaliates, where he flips and slams Gwen to the ground. Gwen now withdraws, while the two remaining bullies continuously boot Finney. Finney and Gwen later attend their classes like nothing happened that morning. After school, Gwen and Finney split up again for their usual Friday schedule. Finney takes his usual route on his way home when he suddenly encounters a familiar black van. He then sees a suspicious man ineptly drop his box. The suspicious man quickly notices Finney and invites him to watch his show, but Finney gets distracted credulously over the black balloons inside the vehicle. He just then realizes the man before him is the grabber. The grabber swiftly chokeholds Finney, but Finney cuts his arm using the pointy tip of his rocket flashlight. The grabber groans in pain, but he keeps on choking Finney and applies pepper spray on his face. Finney wakes up and feels his eyes still sting from the spray, but he forces himself to look at the grabber sitting in front of him. The grabber reassures him that nothing bad is going to happen, but Finney knows he's lying. The grabber spontaneously acts to hear a ringing phone to make his exit. Once isolated, Finney explores the basement where he finds a toilet, carpets, and a broken rotary black phone near the bed. Meanwhile, Gwen and her father file a missing report to the police after they learn Finney hasn't come home yet. Gwen goes to her room afterward and immediately prays to God to help in finding Finney. Back in the basement, Finney strangely hears the black phone ring. He answers it, but he only hears static noises. The grabber unexpectedly emerges from the doorway and informs him the phone is broken. He orders Finney to hang up, but Finney doesn't want to. The grabber displays slight uneasiness because his plan isn't going well. Finney then suggests releasing him since his plan's messed up now, but the grabber says he can't due to his current situation. Just then, Finney realizes the grabber has a visitor upstairs. He wants to scream to alert the visitor upstairs, but the grabber tells him it's useless since the basement is soundproofed once the door closes. Finney then calls the grabber a murderer, but he denies the accusation and blames it on someone else. The grabber tries approaching Finney, but Finney warns him not to, or else he'll scratch his face. The grabber obeys Finney, so he returns to the door and tells Finney for the last time to hang up the phone. The grabber then remembers a creepy memory upon mentioning the black phone. It also rang for him before, but no one responded when he picked it up. The grabber thinks the broken phone rings due to static electricity that disappears the moment it's picked up. The grabber returns upstairs, leaving Finney once again. Finney shouts for help, but no sound reaches outside the basement. He eventually stops and examines his surroundings for a possible escape route. However, the room is so securely tight that even the bed is bolted. Finney eventually falls asleep after formulating his escape. However, he's alerted by the black phone's faint breathing sound. He shouts at the black phone to stop messing with his head when the grabber unexpectedly reappears inside the basement. Finney says he's hungry, but the grabber says he can't bring him food yet due to the visitor. Finney asks what he's doing downstairs if he's not delivering food, and the grabber replies he just wanted to check on him. The grabber leaves the basement again, and Finney goes back to sleep. The black phone rings once again. When Finney answers it, a low, drying voice calls his name. Finney abruptly ends the call because it's impossible for a broken phone to work. The phone still rings over and over until Finney finally toughens up and answers the creepy phone. A familiar voice stops Finney from dropping the call. The voice doesn't remember his own name, but he knows Finney's arm is mint. Just then, Finney realizes that it should be Bruce talking to him. Finney then asks if the phone rang for him too, and Bruce replies it did, but there was no response. Bruce is delighted because Finney can hear him. The grabber hears the ringing too, but he remains incredulous about the broken phone that still works. Bruce initially calls to help Finney find his way out, so he tells Finney to dig a dirt tunnel under the loose tile in the hallway. It turns out, when Bruce was locked in the basement, he used this method to escape, but he ran out of time. Meanwhile, Gwen dreams about Bruce's life from childhood up to the day the grabber took him. She also sees her brother trying to escape from a house with an address 174-7. She wakes up and searches the streets for the similar address in her dream. Back in the basement, Finney begins digging in the hallway, and then he flushes the dirt in the toilet to prevent them from piling up. Later, he covers the hole with a carpet to conceal it from the grabber. The next day, the school administrators gather their students in the gymnasium to show support for Gwen's family, who are currently dealing with Finney's disappearance. Meanwhile, Finney finally receives his first breakfast, but he hesitates if it's safe to eat. The grabber guarantees it's clean, since there's no use in drugging him anymore when he's already in the basement. Afterward, the grabber goes upstairs as usual, but he forgets to lock the door. Finney assumes it's time to escape, but the black phone coincidentally rings. Finney quickly answers the call and hears a new voice, who introduces himself as the boy who delivered newspapers. Finney recognizes him as the missing paperboy. Paperboy stops Finney from going upstairs because the unlocked door is a trap. He explains the grabber expects his victims to escape from the basement after seeing the open door, so he waits upstairs with a belt on hand. The moment his victims climb to the first floor, he catches them and hits them until they pass out. Sadly, Paperboy fell into his trap previously and suffered from endless pain until he collapsed. Now, he warns Finney not to escape, so he won't suffer the same fate like he did. With that information, Finney decides to stay in the basement and only eats the breakfast prepared for him. Meanwhile, Gwen sleeps in the school clinic because she was up late last night thinking about her brother. She then dreams about the paperboy delivering newspapers with his dog in the neighborhood. However, the grabber abducts him shortly, leaving behind his dog and bike on the street. Back in the basement, Paperboy tells Finney about his hidden rope behind a wall that he can use to escape. Finney gets the rope from its hiding place, and then he uses a furrowed carpet to guide the rope up into the steel bars, covering the basement window. He then hooks the rope around a bar, ties a knot in the ends to create a step, and then climbs over the knot to reach the windowsill. However, he falls down along with the steel bar due to his heavy weight. On the other hand, Gwen talks with her father about the visions in her dreams. She wants to use her ability to help with the case, but the father reminds her that their mother committed suicide because she couldn't bear seeing more visions anymore. He only wants Gwen not to end up like her mother, but Gwen is determined to use her ability to do the right thing. The father eventually gives in, so they call the police to investigate the creepy house shown in Gwen's dream. The two detectives arrive at the said house later. A man named Max opens the door and immediately recognizes them as the police for the missing children case. Suddenly, a messy dog keeps barking at the police like it's spotting out some smelly shit. Max tells the messy dog to stay quiet because he's reporting something to the police. Max shows them his detailed map and deduces the possible hiding location of the missing children. The two detectives ask if he's around the neighborhood due to his keen familiarity with the case, but Max reveals he's only crashing in his brother's house here in Denver to assist with the case. So the two detectives show Finney's portrait to see if Max recognizes or has seen him, but sadly he hasn't. The search for Finney meets a dead end, but they encourage Max more to help the police in his own way. Then they instruct him to call the precinct once he discovers a new lead before leaving the house. It's revealed that the visitor who keeps the grabber agitated for the past few days is none other than Max, the grabber's brother. Maxie's presence in the house messed up the grabber's plan to satisfy his masochistic and sadistic persona. Sadly, Max can't figure out that his own brother is the killer and the missing child is right under his nose. Meanwhile, Finney finishes digging the tunnel in the hallway. The grabber visits Finney with breakfast on hand and instantly asks for his identity. Because the police visited his house earlier, the grabber finds his situation getting more complicated and tangled. He's thinking about releasing Finney already, but he demands his name first in exchange for his freedom. However, Finney lies and gives him a different name. The grabber already knows Finney's true name via the daily newspapers, and he's simply testing Finney's honesty. The grabber disappointedly drops Finney's food on the floor and blurts out that he almost released him if only he told the truth. The grabber then goes upstairs, leaving the door unlocked again. However, the grabber hasn't slept yet since Finney's abduction, because Finney has not escaped the basement in the way he expects him to. Back in the basement, Finney talks to a new voice and recognizes him as another missing child named Griffin. Griffin tells Finney to escape now because the grabber is asleep. However, there's a lock placed on the front door. Luckily, Griffin used to own the lock and dictates to Finney where he carved the combination on the wall. Shortly after, Finney finds the code. As quiet as possible, Finney sneaks to the front door and tries 3 possible sets of the combination code. After failing twice, he finally opens the lock, but the messy dog hiding behind a closet suddenly barks, startling the grabber from his deep sleep. He realizes Finney has escaped, so he drives his black van to chase after Finney on the street. Finney shouts for help, but the grabber catches him right before the neighbors' houses light up their porches. The grabber sticks his blade in Finney's neck and warns him not to scream, or else it'll kill him instantly. Finney is sent back into the basement again. Max asks his brother if something's wrong because he heard the dog barking earlier. But his brother tells him to go back to bed and lies that it's just a false alarm. The next day, Gwen dreams about another missing boy named Vance beating up an innocent guy after messing up his pinball game. The cops arrest and situate him inside the police car. Suddenly, Gwen strangely materializes and walks inside her dream. She gets inside the car and sits beside Vance. Then Gwen hears Finney speaking to Vance through the car radio. Afterward, Vance stops the car in front of a house with an address 7741. The words Gwen heard in her dreams are an actual and live conversation between Finney and Vance in the basement. Vance calls Finney to tell him about the connected storage room near the bathroom. However, after exerting effort to open the wall to get through the freezer, Finney can't go out because the grabber locked the freezer from outside. Finney collapses and cries in the corner as he loses hope for an escape. Fortunately, Robin calls Finney this time to encourage him to fight and live longer than him. So he teaches Finney how to punch the grabber effectively and instructs him to fill the phone's receiver with dirt to turn it into his weapon. Meanwhile, Gwen calls the police to report the house she saw in her dream. The police quickly drive to the address to investigate the house property. They find nothing at first until they reach the basement, where they see 5 graves and 1 empty grave, which is purposely made for Finney. It's then revealed that those kidnapped kids have been murdered, but it's not a coincidence or due to the black phone that can allow Finney to talk to those dead missing children. It's because he triggers his psychic abilities like his sister and mother. As for Max, he finally discovers Finney in his brother's basement. Unfortunately, the grabber kills him with an axe. The grabber insanely looks like a serial killer, but Finney is prepared for him. The grabber calls his messy dog and ties him near the door. It's time for the showdown, and Finney outsmarts the grabber with the help of the 5 ghosts. The grabber swings his axe toward Finney, but Finney quickly evades him and leaps across the hidden tunnel in the hallway. The grabber hastily chases after him, but Finney tugs the cord to trip the grabber. The grabber drops and breaks his ankle onto the steel bars at the foundation. Now, the grabber's trapped, and Finney furiously pitches punches at the grabber using the receiver until his mask is removed. The grabber strangely panics upon losing his mask, so Finney uses this chance to strangle him with the phone cord. The black phone rings for the grabber this time, and each 5 ghost mocks the grabber, right before Finney finally snaps his neck. The movie ends with Finney leaving the basement safely by distracting the messy dog with a piece of meat from the freezer. Then he uses the combination code to open the lock on the front door. Seeing her brother exit the grabber's house, Gwen runs to her brother and embraces him. Then the cops secure both houses of the grabber for investigation. Afterward, the father arrives at the property, where he finally reconciles with his children. Days have passed, and Finney returns to school confidently, after earning a high reputation for surviving an abduction and killing the grabber. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.